Hello, my young readers, and welcome back to the channel. And if you're new, welcome. We do hope that you're considering subscribing and coming back often. Now, if you guys are ready, go ahead, run, go get your snacks, go get your drinks, pause this video, run to the bathroom, come on back, and we'll get started. Stay tuned. The name of this story is called Thomas and the Big, Big Bridge. This is part of the Thomas and Friends series. Enjoy. It was a special day for the railway.
We are here to launch the new rail line through the mountains of Sodor,
Sir Topham Hatt announced.
Today, we open the Big Bridge.
What wonderful news! Everyone cheered. The mountains were beautiful. The people of Sodor couldn't wait to visit them. Everyone wanted to see the big bridge. It had towers so high the tops touched the sky. And the valley beneath was so deep that when you were on the big bridge, you could barely see the ground. Thomas was excited about the new rail line. This really is a special day, he said happily. Then Henry chugged up to Thomas. The big engine frowned.
I don't want to go to the mountains,
Henry said nervously.
It's windy up there. Very, very windy.
Henry didn't like the wind. Henry didn't like the rain or snow or hail either. You're a big engine, Henry, Thomas said. You shouldn't be afraid of a little wind. But Henry was afraid, and that made Thomas a bit afraid too.
Gordon, Henry, Thomas, hitch up your coaches,
called Sir Topham Hatt.
It's time for your first trip to the mountains.
Percy and James were glad they didn't have to go to the mountains. They were afraid to cross the big bridge too. There's nothing to be afraid of, Thomas insisted in a voice loud enough for Percy and James to hear. It will be easy to cross the big bridge. Thomas and Henry chugged to the platform. Gordon, the express engine, was already there. His coaches were full of passengers. Annie and Clarabelle were soon hitched behind Thomas. Hurry, hurry, they called.
All aboard,
cried the conductor. Sir Topham Hatt turned to the crowd and waved his hat one last time. Toot, toot, Gordon whistled. Follow me! In a burst of steam, the big blue engine was off. Soon, the trains were rolling through the countryside in a long line. Gordon took the lead. Behind him chugged Henry. Then, because he was the smallest, came Thomas. All along the way, people came out of their houses and cheered when they saw the trains go by. At the foot of the mountain, Henry slowed to a crawl. These mountains are much too high, he moaned. I can't go. I'm afraid of heights. Don't be silly, said Thomas bravely. I'll be right here behind you. But Henry didn't budge. He was very nervous, and that made Thomas nervous too. Come on, Thomas gently pushed Henry. We have to go. The brand new tracks were smooth and shiny, but Henry barely moved along them. The truth was, Henry didn't want to reach the top of the mountain because then he'd have to cross the big bridge. If Percy and James and Henry are all afraid, thought Thomas, maybe I should be afraid too? The tracks grew steep as Thomas and Henry puffed up the mountain. They could hardly keep up with Gordon. The big blue engine rushed ahead. Gordon was a strong engine. The steep tracks didn't tire him at all. "Wait for us," Henry called, but Gordon climbed higher and higher until he was out of sight. "I don't think I can make it," Henry groaned, his steam giving out at last. "This mountain is too steep." "Keep going," Thomas urged him. "We can't let a little mountain stop us." But Thomas was having trouble chugging up the steep mountain too. And he was beginning to worry about crossing the big bridge. Finally, Thomas and Henry arrived at the top of the mountain. There it was, the big bridge, and it was high. It was windy up there too, very windy. "I won't go," Henry declared. "But we have to cross," Thomas said bravely. "Our passengers want to see the mountains on the other side." "Hurry, hurry," Anna and Clarabelle cried. The coaches were so excited that Thomas had trouble keeping them in line. Thomas searched the tracks ahead. Gordon was nowhere to be seen. He had already crossed the bridge and rode into the mountains beyond. Thomas and Henry were alone. "I'll go first," Thomas said at last. "Then you can follow me, Henry." "If the wind blows, close your eyes," Henry said. "That way you won't see anything scary." Click, clack, click, clack, click, clack. Thomas began to cross the bridge. Thomas looked up. He could see cottony clouds touching the top of the bridge. Nervously, he looked down, but the bridge was so high he couldn't see the ground. A sudden gust of wind shook the bridge. This scared Thomas, and he closed his eyes so tightly that he couldn't see where he was going. Click, clack, click, clack, click, crash! Thomas came to a sudden stop. He opened one eye for a quick peek. "Oh no!" he cried. His wheels were off the track. "Are you all right, Thomas?" called Henry. "I'm stuck," Thomas said glumly. "I couldn't see where I was going and my front wheels have jumped the track." Just then, Gordon returned. He frowned when he saw Thomas stuck in the middle of the bridge. "Go find Harold," Gordon called to Henry. Relieved, Henry backed down the mountain to find the helicopter. Thomas kept his eyes closed. He was too afraid to look. But inside his coaches, the passengers enjoyed the wonderful view. Finally, Thomas heard the whirl of rotors. Harold was here to rescue him. Slowly, Thomas opened his eyes. He looked at the blue sky above and the green mountains all around. "What a lovely view!" he exclaimed. "I was silly to shut my eyes. I almost missed everything." "Hitch the rope to your buffer and hold on!" Harold cried. In no time at all, Harold had lifted Thomas back onto the tracks. Thomas backed up to where Henry waited. "Come on, Henry," said Thomas. "The view is spectacular. I should never have been afraid." With that, Thomas turned and chugged happily across the big bridge. Henry watched in wonder. If he's not afraid, maybe I shouldn't be either, Henry decided. Slowly, the big green engine made his way across the bridge too. Soon, Thomas and Henry arrived at the station house. The mountains were really lovely. Everyone was happy to have seen them, but Thomas was the happiest one of all. He was proud that he had crossed the big bridge. Well, that ends our story. And like I said in the beginning, this was a real gem of a story because I think it had a lot of good takeaways out of it.
That's right, little darling. And let me tell you, this bridge is not your ordinary bridge. It's big. No, scratch that. It's big, big.
Okay, just tell me, how big is big, big?
Well, okay, picture this, little darling. It's so big, big, that even Thomas, our trusty little engine, gets the case of the jitters.
No. He didn't have the case of the jitters until Henry kept saying how scared he was. And I mean to be bigger than Thomas. And when you look at a couple of pictures of them side by side, he is a bigger engine. And for him to keep saying how scared he was of the big, big bridge, of course, it's going to rattle, little Thomas.
And I get that. You are absolutely right. But our little Thomas, he's not one to back down from a challenge, no matter how big it is. Thing I was wondering, what's the big deal with the big, big bridge anyway? Why is it causing such a stir on the island of Sodor?
Well, let's see. This bridge is the getaway to all sorts of new places for Thomas and his friends and the folks of the island of Sodor. But there's a catch.
Oh, do tell.
Well, the catch is that this big, big bridge has a reputation of being a bit wobbly.
Wobbly, you say?
That's right. It's like trying to cross a tightrope while juggling cabbages. It's nerve-wracking.
Well, I understand why all the engines, and they should be, nervous about crossing that bridge. Now, not all the engines seem to have been nervous. They just got on through it. But I can understand why anybody would be nervous to go across the big, big bridge, which was high. And did you hear that wind? Oh, yeah, I'd be nervous if I was one of those engines trying to cross it.
And while all this was happening, could you not smell the takeaway that was just cooking underneath? Because I could see it happening.
Oh, I got a whiff of it. So please do spill the beans and let us all know what did you see in your takeaway.
Well, what I was beginning to see early on was Thomas was conquering his fear or his nervousness about the big, big bridge. He was in a really good mindset to begin with, and Henry was starting to, make it a little bit questionable, but he was able to literally conquer his fear and just move forward. And I think that's what made Henry was able to conquer his fear, because if little Thomas can do it, then big Henry should be able to do it too.
And I love that about Thomas. And you will find that in almost all the stories we have on Thomas on this channel, that he has such a really great spirit. And his spirit, he uses and he conquers a lot of his fears and his challenges. And I like to take that into my daily life and help me conquer a lot of my challenges. So, kudos to Thomas, and kudos to anybody out there who does what Thomas does and conquer your fears and your challenges. Well, little darling, with that, I've got to say my bye-byes and see you all in the next video. Bye!
Well, there goes Miss Triangel. She was running late today, so she had to get out of here. But I hope you enjoyed this story. I hope you enjoyed the takeaway, and I hope you also enjoyed Triangel's advice. So until next time, my young readers, I am your little darling narrator, out.